Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Bob. I'm a grateful believer who still sometimes struggles with love, abandonment issues, low self-esteem, and other things. However, the Lord has given me great victory in most cases. I'm supposed to say hello, Bob. Thank you. Love me and never leave me. Okay. Thank you. Well, I'd like to welcome all of you tonight to Celebrate Recovery 2012. This is, we have actually completed 11 years of Celebrate Recovery here at Creekside Church. And this is our 12th year. I remember when we first started Celebrate Recovery, it was back in 2000. We were actually at a different location. We were at the old Oddfellows Hall. How many of you remember where that was, the Oddfellows Hall? It was down in central town, downtown San Leandro behind Safeway. It was an old building, and that's where we held our church for about 8 years. And we kicked off Celebrate Recovery, and I remember the first night that we did Celebrate Recovery, I think there was like 10 or 12 people that showed up, and they were half men, half women, and we just didn't have any trained leaders. In fact, I wasn't even trained either, but we just jumped in and started off. And since that time, God has blessed us immeasurably. And over the years, hundreds and hundreds of people have actually completed the program with great success, powerful, powerful changes in people's lives. And so tonight we are about to inaugurate our new program for 2012. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to just kind of go over the program for this new year, give you a sense of what it's all about. So why don't we get started? Now I'm assuming, I know most of you here, but I'm assuming that you're here because you have some hurt or some habit or some hang-up that you just haven't been able to put under control and is really, you'd really finally have decided that you'd like to do something about it. Now, I want you to notice I use the expression hurts, habits, and hang-ups. This is how we characterize our issues and Celebrate Recovery. We've all been hurt. I think everybody could say that. We've all been hurt over the years, sometimes deeply and sometimes very painfully. And we've all hurt other people as well, either on purpose or inadvertently. And of course, circumstances of life sometimes just hem us in and overpower us and overwhelm us. And as a result of all these things, these factors in our lives, most of us have developed some kind of dysfunctional behaviors, problems, and difficulties. And in Celebrate Recovery, we call these things hurts, habits, and hang-ups. So, for example, some of us could be struggling with drugs. Some could be struggling with alcohol, codependency, or anger. Some people could be struggling with overeating or undereating, for that matter. Sexual issues. People could be struggling with anxiety. The list is almost endless. But as far as Celebrate Recovery is concerned, it really doesn't matter, because the road to recovery goes to the same place. See, we use the same materials in our program. For all of our issues, it doesn't matter what the issue happens to be. We use the same materials. We rely on Jesus Christ as our only higher power. See, we have no other higher power. Jesus is the person, the divine person to whom we turn to for everything that we need in our recovery program. And we use biblically tested principles. Now, these biblical principles come from Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, which is probably the most famous sermon that has ever been preached. The day that Jesus preached that great sermon, he was walking along the shores of the Sea of Galilee, and there was this huge crowd that was following him, as was typical in that point in his ministry. And he sees this small hill off in the distance, makes his way to it, goes up and sits down on it, and he preaches this great sermon called the Sermon on the Mount. You can find the full text of this sermon, if you'd like, in the book of Matthew, chapters 5, 6, and 7. Now, when Jesus began his Sermon on the Mount, he gave us what is called the 8 Beatitudes. Now, the Beatitudes are very ingenious. Jesus did a really interesting thing. What he did is he took everything that the Bible had to say about healing, and he consolidated it in the Beatitudes. So the Beatitudes, these 8 Beatitudes, are really steps to healing. And our program, Celebrate Recovery, is based on these Beatitudes completely. In fact, the 8 principles that were just read by Rick are based upon the 8 Beatitudes. All right, let me just give you a quick overview of how our program works. Now, we have meetings every Wednesday night throughout the year. The only Wednesday that we don't meet is the 4th of July. And that's a particular holiday that everybody celebrates, and so we just avoid having Celebrate Recovery on that particular day. But otherwise, we meet every Wednesday evening throughout the entire year. Now, each one of our meetings, when we meet, is broken down into 2 one-hour segments. First hour is called a general meeting, and it goes from 7 o'clock until 8 o'clock. This is what you're in right now. You're in a general meeting. And then following our general meeting in the second hour, we have our small group time, and that is from 8 o'clock until 9 o'clock. Now, if you want to get here a little earlier, some of you did this tonight, at 6 o'clock, from 6 to 7, we offer dinner. Now, we do charge a small amount for our dinner just to cover our costs, and the food is actually very good, very simple, but very good. I think you will agree, those of you who ate tonight. Rick Angel, by the way, was the one who did the cooking. And he's probably cleaning up in the kitchen, so I'll tell him that you guys clapped. All right, now when we start out our general meetings, we always start them out in the same way. We start with praise and worship time. Now, praise and worship is always led by our Celebrate Recovery worship team, and it usually goes from 15 to 20 minutes in duration. Tonight you had some firsthand experience what our praise and worship team is like. And they lead us every single meeting right at the beginning of the meeting. Worship is a vital part of our program because it helps us transition from what's going on in our daily lives to what's going on here. See, most of us come into these meetings and we're carrying a lot of baggage. A lot of stuff has been going on during the day. A lot of things we've been experiencing that are just not so good. And we're carrying all this baggage, and it tends to make us preoccupied. Praise and worship helps us to shed this stuff. You see, when we get involved in praise and worship, we change our focus. Instead of looking at ourselves, we begin to focus on God. And that's extremely important. Okay, following praise and worship time, we have either a teaching time or a special program time. Well, I want to talk about the teaching time first. In our teaching time, we cover all of the Celebrate Recovery lessons. And there are 25 lessons in total, altogether. So every 2 weeks, we teach a new lesson. And since there are 25 lessons, you can see it takes approximately a year to cover all the lessons. These lessons cover things like denial, inventory, sponsors, relapse, and a whole host of other topics that are pertinent to recovery. Very important information that you need to know about as you progress through your own personal recoveries. Now, these lessons are contained in workbooks. There are 4 of them, and they look like this. Each workbook contains roughly 6 lessons. I think one contains 7 lessons, something like that. For altogether, there's a total of 25 lessons, and they're all in these workbooks. And we have copies. We actually do have copies of these workbooks in the lobby, and so I would encourage you to take the opportunity to take a look at them and evaluate them for yourself. Now, in the weeks between our teaching time, we have special programs, which usually consist of testimonies. Now, I'm going to ask you, does everybody have a copy of the schedule? Looks like this. There's 2 different colors. This one happens to be yellow, but then we do have one that's got some green on it. If you don't have a copy, just raise your hand, and we'll be happy to bring one to you. Okay, there's a couple of people. I'll wait until you get your copy, because we're going to look at it together here. Just keep your hand up so that Ann can see you. Okay, are we all set? All right, let's take a look at the schedule. I want you to find January 18th. This is the top of the front page there. Everybody see that? As you know, that's our kickoff tonight, January 18th, Introduction to Celebrate Recovery. Notice the next week, January 25th. See, that's where we have our first lesson. Everybody see that? It's called Denial. Subtitle there is Accepting the Truth. And then the following week is February the 1st, and here we have our special program, first special program. We have Jeff and Lisa Matthews, who are Celebrate Recovery leaders from another Celebrate Recovery nearby, who have agreed to come and share their testimony with us on that particular night. So it'll be a couple's testimony. So this is the format that we follow throughout the year. We alternate lessons and special programs every week. So as you go down the page, down to July 25th, you'll see that's the formula that we follow. And if you turn the page over, on the back side, you'll see the rest of the meetings for the remainder of the year. And it goes all the way down to December 19th, where we have our Christmas party. So this covers the entire program: lesson, special program, lesson, special program. All right, now after we have our general meetings, we have our small group meetings. And I've put a list of these small group meetings in your bulletin. Everybody should have one of these. Everybody have a bulletin? Anybody do not? Okay, we have need a bulletin here. Ann, can you want to get one for her, please? Okay. Now on the back side of the bulletin, we have our small groups identified. Everybody see that? Now notice that there are two general classifications for small groups. There's open share meetings, and there's step study meetings. By the way, under the heading open share meetings, women, there's a multi-issues, and everybody see that? And right below it, there's a codependency group. That group is not going to meet for another 4 weeks. And the reason for that is the two leaders that are running a current codependency group are finishing up one for last year. And they have about 4 more weeks to go. And when they finish that meeting, or that group rather, they will start up this new group. So we'll keep you advised about the actual start date for that particular meeting. All right, what I'd like to do now is talk a little bit about step studies. The heading there where it says step study meetings. I'm going to talk a little bit about those. Each lesson in the workbook that I mentioned, step studies rather, use the workbooks that I just mentioned earlier. All of our step study meetings use workbooks. Everybody follow that? Okay. Each lesson in the workbook contains material, specific material pertinent to a given lesson. And there are some self-analysis questions provided as well. And so what we ask you to do is we ask you to review the lesson material and answer the questions before you attend your step meeting. For example, let's say you plan to start a step study next week. The next week's lesson, by the way, is called Denial. If you want to look back at your schedule, you'll see that Denial is scheduled for next Wednesday. So before you come to that meeting, what we ask you to do is to get a workbook, read the material in the Denial lesson, answer the questions that are in that section. There's about 9 or 10 different questions prior to attending your meeting. Then, and when you come to your meeting, that following Wednesday, you will have the opportunity to share what you've written down in your workbooks. And you will also have the opportunity to hear what everybody else has written down in their workbooks. See, that's how a step study is organized. We use workbooks, we come in prepared, we have our questions answered, and we share our answers in the group. And if you have a group of 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever number of people it is, the synergism effect is amazing. In fact, we've discovered this process is extremely powerful. See, the Holy Spirit is present. He is overseeing what's going on in the meetings. He knows your issues. He knows what's going on with you, and somebody else may have a similar issue or maybe say something prompted by the Holy Spirit that will minister to you, and it impacts your program. So it's a very, very powerful system. These questions, by the way, are very well designed, self-conceived, or well-crafted, because what they do is they help you identify your own issues. They allow you to dig in to what your issues really are. All right, so that's step study meetings. Anybody have any questions about those before I go on? Everybody follow that? Okay. Let's go ahead and talk about open share meetings. Now, open share meetings do not use workbooks. Instead, they rely upon bulletin inserts that you will get each week in your bulletin package. And I have put an insert in your bulletin package. Everybody want to retrieve it? It's entitled Denial. This is the same insert that we're going to be using next week for our denial lesson. Everybody see it? Everybody have it? Okay. Notice it contains spaces for you to take notes. On the front side of the page, as well as on the back side of the page, there's space for you to take notes. And as you're sitting in the general meeting next week, you will be hearing a lesson on denial. And you can use this sheet of paper on which to take notes. I want you to notice at the bottom of the page, there's something called a leader's focus question. Everybody see that? And the question is, in what areas of your life are you now beginning to face the truth and break the effects of denial? So this focus question is used in the open share meeting to get discussion started. So after you've finished your general meeting, you go to your open share meeting following, and the leader will, after having done some preliminary things, will bring up this focus question, ask this focus question. And this is designed to start or to stimulate discussion. You respond to the focus question by sharing whatever is on your heart. So you can see there are no prepared questions, no workbooks, no special formats. Only you share what is on your heart. And you can see from this that when you compare open share meetings to step studies, that open share meetings are not as structured as step study meetings. However, we found that they are still very, very powerful. Now, you are free to decide whichever meeting you would like to attend. You can start with one kind of meeting, and if you like it, you can stay there. If you want to make a change, you can do that as well. And you can move around until you find something that you like. However, having said that, we do recommend that you eventually settle on a group, a particular group, one that you like, one that fits you, and get plugged in. All right, now within the context of step study and open share, we have groups that are broken down by issue. For example, let's take a look under step study meetings. You'll see there are a number of groups listed there. One of them is a group called dependency. Everybody see that? Dependency. There are dependency groups for men, and there are dependency groups for women. Now, people with dependency issues frequently use distractions, for lack of a better term, to help them cope with life. They'll use things like drugs, or alcohol, or food, or spending, or whatever. The list is almost endless. And usually, in most cases, there's some kind of recurring problem in a person's life that produces pain. And when the pain gets too great, and periodically it will do that, they want to feel better. And we call this the need to medicate. At that point, when the pain reaches a crisis level, there is a strong need to medicate. And they'll choose whatever medication is appropriate for them for that moment. It could be drugs, it could be alcohol, it could be food, it could be anything. And that is the way in which they deal with problems in their life. And that's called dependency. That's a dependency issue. And this group is designed to deal with that. Now, there's a second category of group under the step study meetings category, and it's called codependency. Everybody see that? There's women codependency and there's men codependency. Now, codependent people generally try to control other people for all kinds of reasons. And they often take responsibility for other people's problems, and they try to solve them, most of the time unsuccessfully. And in this process, they often aid and abet dysfunctional people, the dysfunctional person that they're trying to minister to. Give you an example. Alcoholic husband married to a codependent wife. Now, the codependent wife will say, if only I were prettier or smarter, or if I did something else better, then he would stop drinking. See what's going on there? She's taking responsibility for his drinking, and she's trying to solve his problem by doing something herself. That's codependent behavior. And it doesn't work. And when it doesn't work, the codependent then becomes frustrated, and other problems begin to develop. Now, also under the codependent heading, there's the opposite situation where people try to control us. Now, this usually happens when we have no boundaries, or we're engaged in unhealthy relationships, or we have unresolved anger, or we have low self-esteem. These are basic ancillary issues which precipitate this problem, and that's codependency. All right, now under open share meetings, there are also groups. First group that's listed there is multi-issues for men, and there's multi-issues for women. Now, multi-issues are for people who have dependency and or codependency issues, but are not ready to start a step study. So we can have in an open share meeting, multi-issues meeting, we can have somebody who's dealing with a dependency issue, somebody else is dealing with a codependency issue. We have just a whole mixture of different issues in that group. But these folks, even though they want to do something about their problems, their respective problems, are not ready to go into a step study. So what we recommend then is that these people start with an open share group and then change to a step study group when they feel comfortable. Now, also under the open share meeting category, we have another group called Dependency Group for Men. Everybody see that? This is not a dependency step study like we talked about a moment ago. This is an open share group, but it focuses on dependency issues. Now, we're offering this group by popular demand. A lot of guys from last year really liked the group, and so they wanted to continue it this year, and so we are offering it once again this year. So it's a open share meeting, it's for men, and it has to do with dependency issues. All right, so those are the groups that we offer. Right below the group, get my bulletin here. All these group meetings, there's a newcomers class, and that's for future meetings when we have, like next week, we have some new people show up for the first time. They would go to a newcomers class and get oriented, kind of like what you're getting oriented tonight. And then we do offer childcare, as you can see, from 0 to 12. I don't think I've ever seen a 0. pretty close to it. Anyway, we do have that. All right. Now, after all of our group meetings, we offer what is called Solid Rock Cafe. So that goes from 9 o'clock until 10 o'clock, and it's a time of fellowship. And we meet right across the hall in the multi-purpose room. You can go there and get a cup of coffee, maybe a cup of tea or a cold drink, and just hang out. It's a time of fellowship, and it's a very, very important part of our program. We really encourage everybody to interact with everybody else in the program. That way we can develop relationships, and we can find accountability partners and sponsors, which are also a very important part of the recovery program. All right, that's kind of a thumbnail of what Celebrate Recovery is all about. That's what we do here every week. So what I'd like to do now is I want to introduce to you the leaders who lead these various groups. And as I introduce them to you, I'd like the leaders, I should say, to stand up and remain standing so that you guys get a chance to see who they are. So I'll introduce you in a moment, Chris. Okay, that's Chris Harris. All right, so the first group that I want to introduce is our women's multi-issue leader, and that's Gail Reinhart. Next leader I want to introduce is our men's multi-issue group, and that's Chris Harris. Now you can stand up, Chris. Keep standing, keep standing. The next open share group leader that I want to introduce, there's actually a leader and a co-leader. That's Terry Drace. He's co-leader. He's the leader, rather, of men's open share dependent. Gosh, get this right. Men's dependency. And the co-leader is Charles Matashed. Charles? Okay. Now, women's dependency. Carmen Laver, please stand up. Okay. Her co-leader is Lisa McDonald, and she is not here tonight, unfortunately, but the two of them will lead the women's dependency group. Then we have women's codependency. These are step studies that I'm talking about now, and that's Marion Weichel. Please stand up, Marion. And her co-leader is Pam Koningsberg. This is the Women's Codependent Step Study. Then we have another Women's Codependent Step Study that's currently in progress. That's the one I mentioned a moment ago. And the leader is Fran Sequeira. Please stand up, Fran. And her co-leader is Letty Harris. Now, these ladies are, as I say, currently leading a codependent group, which is going to finish up probably in about 4 weeks or so. And when they do finish, then they will be starting this new group, this open share codependency group for women. Okay. Now we have a sexual issues group, and that's led by John Weld. John, would you please stand? Thanks. And then we have a men's dependency group. This is a step study that meets on Thursday night, and that's Rick Angel. And his co-leader is still Charles Matachet. All right. Another step study that we have is the men's codependent step study, and that's Charlie. Where are you, Charlie? Landmesser. And his co-leader is JJ. Please stand up, JJ, wherever you are. Okay, good. And then finally, we have our leader of our newcomers group, and that's Ann Gibbs. Where are you, Ann? Okay. And her co-leader is Anthony Baca. Anthony, where are you? There he is. Okay. These are all the leaders for 2012, Celebrate Recovery. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to adjourn this meeting, and I want the leaders all to go out into the lobby, please, ahead of you guys. And then the rest of you can go out and have an opportunity to interact with the leaders and talk with them, decide which group that you'd like to try out, perhaps. And if you're interested in getting your materials, pick up your materials. And you can also check out the room where your group is going to be meeting. And you can get that information from your leader. So thank you very much.